Hello, my name is Toni Anderson, and I'm interested in knowing more about what's going on inside of us at all times in our consciousness, subconsciousness, the brain. And I participate in the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, which is a non-profit, it's a university affiliated with the United Nations. It's non-profit. And today we're going to be talking a little bit about the mind and how it works, and I'm very happy to have with me Sister Denise, who is the director of the Los Angeles chapter of the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University. And I'd like to just have her now tell us a little bit about the center and some of the activities they're involved in, and a little bit more about what the university is all about. Sister Denise.
Thank you. Well, the university has been in existence since 1937 with its headquarters in Mount Abu in India. The center here in Los Angeles is one of about 1,800 branches, all of which provide an education in spiritual knowledge and Raja Yoga meditation. So people come for group classes, individual classes, courses. We have intensives, retreats, seminars, many things. And in connection with the United Nations, we have also been involved in some global projects, in particular the Global Cooperation for a Better World. And this has been very helpful to enable the individual to feel the importance of their particular contribution to world problems that seem to be much too big for any one person, let alone even any one government. Our main focus is, of course, meditation, which means thinking, deep thinking on things that are important. And so we provide an environment where people can come and really experience peace and serenity and learn how to use their minds positively and effectively.
So this is RAJYOGA. So basically then the definition of RAJYOGA again would be?
It would be the link of the mind which results in personal sovereignty or self-sovereignty, where you feel that you are indeed master of your thoughts, of your words, your actions, and you can handle your circumstances. You feel confident about who you are and what you're doing.
Oh. So today we kind of want to discuss a little bit about the brain and the mind. And I'm interested, because I'm always interested in getting in deeper inside myself and how I can get the best from me out there. So I'd like you to tell me a little bit of difference. But what is the difference between the brain and the mind?
Well, the main difference, of course, is that the brain is tangible. The brain is a physical thing, and the mind is intangible. It's not physical. It is a very subtle organ of thought, which is really part of your soul, whereas the brain is more part of your body.
So when they say, oh, that's a brain child, or that they're really using their brain, how is that defined? I mean, what does that really mean?
Well, you see, if you have a good mind, but you don't have a good brain, then you're not going to be able to express what's possible in your mind. So that your brain is very much the hardware, and your mind is more like the software. So that when they say brain child, they're really talking about somebody who has a very good intellect, a very good mind, and they are expressing that through the medium of their brain and then out through their other physical organs.
So you hit on something. So basically, if I've got this correct, the mind is the software, and the hardware, like a computer, is the brain.
That's right.
Okay. Now, if I wanted to do, okay, so tell me, how do I get in touch with what part that makes me do what I do?
Well, the brain is like a machine, a very sophisticated machine, and then you, the being who are using your brain, you are a someone, and your brain is like a something. You see. So when you want to get in touch with the you who's using your brain, that we would call that as soul consciousness. You see, and your mind is the organ of your soul. It's a very subtle capacity within your being that is capable of producing thought and all feelings and emotions, imagination, your creativity. All of that starts in your mind, and then it is transposed into the practical material world through the medium of your brain.
So do my thoughts, or whatever it is that I'm getting in touch with my brain, with my mind, can that process that you just talked about come out differently because it goes through the brain?
Well, you see, when you're by yourself, inside yourself, thinking, that is your mind producing thoughts which instantly are being registered in your brain, you see. So that when a person is dead, the brain isn't doing anything and the mind is gone, you see. So that in order for the brain to function, the mind must be there. The two are all the time working together. And because of this, ordinarily, people who are thinking of the human being as a biological organism only, they would not distinguish between the brain activity and the mind activity, whereas as a spiritual study, we find that we want to make a distinction because there is a real difference between the being who is thinking and the organ through which that thought power is coming, which is part of the physical organism, which is not the same as the person occupying it.
Phew. Then how do I get this thought process out on to be positive, to be good, all those good qualities that I know are in there? How do I get those out through the mind and brain out on a daily basis?
Well, you see, your mind is going to be producing thoughts all the time. And the question to consider is, what is it that stimulates the thoughts, those particular ones, to come up? And that we would then need to look at another aspect of your soul, which is the impressions of the past. And so that whatever has been your habit, even including your habits of thinking, these habits will have a tendency to come up. They have a lot of power, they have a lot of momentum. So you might decide in another part of your soul where your decision making takes place, which we call the intellect. You see, you might decide in your intellect that I'm going to have, 10 minutes creative, positive, worthwhile thought. And that decision may be countermanded by a habit of having wasteful, negative thought. And so what you're seeing is that your decision-making power may be less strong than the power of the momentum of your past thinking habits, you see. So that your mind is then influenced by the power of your habits and is not so influenced by the power of your decision. And in that case, you have to come to terms with the fact that you have a weak power of decision. And one of the reasons for studying meditation and RAJYOGA is to change that situation so that your power of decision is given strength and the combinations and patterns of your habits of thinking are altered so that they are to your satisfaction and that you are not having an internal conflict, you see, which a lot of us have.
Boy. This is a lot of information too. So the habits that we have that are ingrained in us, if my thoughts, an example, we'll say I happen to like food, overeat. If in my mind or my process I'm saying, okay, I'm going to be very good. I'm not going to eat the pie. I'm not going to eat the things that are wrong here. I'm going to eat the good salad and the steamed vegetables. But my habit gets in the way and I see myself ending up eating the pie. How do I change that habit from the good that I thought inside? What's the process of getting that over on the other side?
Okay, the process is this. Naturally, your whole being, physical, mental, spiritual, has a natural inclination to do that which is good for itself. So that when you find that a negative inclination is dominating over your natural inclination, what it means is that you are temporarily out of touch with your essential self. And we give a name to that as body conscious. So that when you are body conscious, the habits of body consciousness will come through powerfully. So what you have to do is to switch your consciousness from a physical consciousness to a spiritual consciousness. And when you do that, which is what we teach people in meditation, then what happens is that your natural inclinations, your taste, your intuitions, and your instincts, they will all be automatically those which are good for you. So that therefore, when you are soul conscious, you will like the steamed vegetables and all of that. But when you slip off from soul consciousness, then at that time, your old habits will kick in. And the only way that you can change that is to switch your consciousness back to soul consciousness. And what happens is, again and again, we slip into body consciousness because that too is a long-term ingrained habit. And soul consciousness is a new thing that we're learning. So it's like any kind of sport or skill or art. You have to practice it again and again. So what we teach people is that, okay, when you come to us at the center, we sit, we show you what to do, we show you how to meditate, and then, okay, you go into your daily life and you have the aim to ask yourself frequently, am I being soul conscious? And by asking yourselves this question frequently during the day, which only takes a second, you bring yourself again and again into soul consciousness, and you create the new habit of being inclined towards those inclinations and tendencies and thoughts that correspond to your true spiritual essence, which is a more pure consciousness than the more material consciousness that you have been used to being in.
Well, I know at the center that you teach this. Could you kind of tell us a little bit, how do I become soul conscious?
We talked to you about the signs of soul consciousness. For example, one sign is that you are in a state of tranquility, you are peaceful, you feel at one with yourself, you feel good about yourself. So that when you are feeling tense, anxious, negative, irritable, then you know that those are not the signs of soul consciousness, they are the signs of body consciousness. And it's not that you are primarily tense, anxious and irritable, but more than that, or behind that, you are body conscious. And so that instead of trying not to be tense, angry, irritable and upset, you try to be soul conscious, and then automatically you aren't going to be feeling those things because you have switched your consciousness at a much deeper level. And so what happens when you conscientiously do that and you practice to do that, you get a real feel for the difference. And then as soon as you notice that you're body conscious and you're getting, affected by things, then you just know that it's a simple act of mind to switch your consciousness over, you see. And so, for example, your soul is in the third eye point, you see. So in order for you to become soul conscious, you have to think the thought that I am here, and I'm the soul, and I'm peaceful and tranquil, and the feelings of irritation and all of that are just body consciousness. And I don't have to be in that consciousness if I don't want to be. So that we're bringing to bear our will, which is getting stronger, our recognition, which is getting clearer, and we just put forward a thought, and that thought has a tendency to create the atmosphere of those qualities and make them predominate and prevail in the atmosphere of your inner space here. in contrast to those other ones, which will then go away because you have told them to, and you are indeed in charge of what goes on.
Now, this process sounds, the way you're describing it, is a very long sort of process. How fast are you, well, you've been in this very long, I'm assuming, so how fast would it take a person to get to that place?
Well, it's instant. The problem is there are certain circumstances where you find yourself overwhelmed, and then at that time it's not instant. So when we practice is when there aren't any particular circumstances. You're in a neutral situation. During the time of neutrality you practice, so that at the time of crisis you've got something with which to hold on to and to make the switch over.
So then our emotions, everyday emotions that we have just by living, craziness, how, in my own life, they surface very fast. I find myself saying, oh, stop it, Toni, pull back, detach yourself, watch what's going on, because I've been learning the teachings and I'm understanding that. But how do we control that emotional part of us that causes reaction in other people? Do you understand that one?
Yes. Again, it's part of the practice. We, when an emotion is coming up, it comes in waves. And when we practice, we also have part of the practice which is retrospectiveness. You look back every day at the end of the day and you observe yourself losing your cool. At the end of the day, you look back, you see, okay, in this situation I lost my cool because this particular something provoked me and I became susceptible. So you find that you can identify the things that ordinarily will succeed in provoking you. And why they will succeed in provoking you will be generally because you feel lack of self-respect in those areas, or you feel weak in those areas. So then what happens is you can take a good look at yourself, see the areas where you are not feeling totally good about yourself, and you can absorb in your meditation that which fills up the sense of emptiness. Because meditation is not just only changing your consciousness, it's more than that. Another part of meditation that's very crucial is the ability to turn your attention to a higher power and absorb qualities from that source. You sit in silence and you open yourself up to those higher energies and you draw them in, very much like if you have a stick of celery which is a bit dried up, and it flops, and you know what to do is put it in a glass of water and leave it in the refrigerator for 2 or 3 hours, and then it's stiff again because it absorbed the water by osmosis. So in the same way, meditation is like a kind of a spiritual osmosis where you just draw in these powers into yourself, the power of peace, the power of tranquility, the power of self-confidence, the power to face things, the power to flex with this and that, so that you are really learning how to nurture yourself spiritually. And then, of course, you will look after yourself physically, because if you're not looking after yourself physically, it's because you're not looking after yourself spiritually. So there's a very deep connection between those two.
So basically, this is not basic stuff. This is heavy stuff we're talking about here. If I do these practices and I do the meditation and I do what I'm supposed to do, then why is my life not that good? What causes your life, if you're doing all these things to get it corrected, to still go in directions that you may not have control of? In other words, do you have the control? Who's in control here?
Good question, very good question. Of course, we have to come to terms with the fact that our habits that we arrived in this life with are already well ingrained. And so that we have a momentum which is the cause of the parts of our lives that we don't like and that we want to correct. So what happens is, once you start to do the things to correct your life, you have to be patient, because you're doing something to change a habit pattern which is long-term. Therefore, you find that over the course of time, if you observe yourself and analyze yourself and look back, you will find that while your life may not be exactly what you want it to be yet, its direction is changing. And so you need to see that if the direction of your life is changing and you're bringing good things into it, and you're gradually eliminating the things that are obviously negative, and you find that it's a continuing process, you keep on adding more good things and removing more bad things, and you find that it is a systematic process and your life is getting better all the time. We're not promising anybody that you can fix your life in 5 minutes. But what we are saying is that you understand what you do that's making your life go wrong, and then stop doing that and start doing the things which are calculated to make your life go well. Then you are going in a different direction, and you will certainly get where you're going.
So if I'm as I'm in the world, and I'm out there trying to make my business run and trying to make money and trying to accumulate all these things that I think are going to make me feel better, basically what you're saying is that there's a much deeper act inside here that has to be cleaned up and straightened up so that those things will happen in the natural course of things.
Naturally, because you see, the mind takes pleasure from sense pleasures, but those sense pleasures are short-lived, and what we're looking for is long-term pleasure. So therefore we have to get our priorities straight and know that for me to pay all attention on getting pleasure from sense perceptions and sense gratification is not the most profitable use of my time and energy, but I need to balance that with taking my pleasure, taking my internal sustenance and nurturing from the intangible things. In other words, I have to balance my spiritual inner life with my material outer life, and when those are in balance, I'm going to be happy no matter what.
But I also can see that the focus is going to be less external and more internal, on being the high up happiness is really in here. And it's really not out there.
Well, of course, when you're going to be well nurtured inside, the outside is going to take care of itself. You see, my externals are just fine. And I don't have to really worry about them. And I'm not trying to feel better by things out there. My effort is on the inside, and then automatically the outside will reflect that. So I don't need to worry about the material thing. It's all right. I see.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you, this has been a interesting discussion, and it's obviously we've only just touched it. We could go on and on about the mind and the brain, and my head right now is racing with questions that I'd like to ask, and we're really running out of time. But I just want to thank you again for being with us, and hope we can continue these kind of discussions, which I'm sure we will. And I know you're going to lead us in a meditation. And before we do that, if you're interested in knowing more about the Brahma Kumaris World Spiritual University, there will be a phone number on at the end of the show, and feel free to call about the classes and the discussions, and everything there is free of charge. And I know since I've been going there, I've been learning an awful lot about what's going on inside of me, and there is still much more to learn. But life is exciting, and the ability to be able to know more about what is going on within ourselves and our consciousness, subconsciousness, and the brain is very, very stimulating. So thank you very much for being with us, and we will now have a meditation with Sister Denise.
First of all, I allow myself to become at ease within myself, taking a few moments off to get quiet I turn my mind away from the everyday concerns. I set aside the people who normally I have to think about. And I carry myself by the power of my mind into a new dimension. The feelings of spiritual pleasure are just a thought away. My mind is able to take me outside the limits of the visible world. And I can reach a world of light. A world where I am close to the source of highest qualities. I can taste and feel the atmosphere of spiritual love around me. And I can feel myself absorbing that. It is as if I have complete access to a revitalizing energy that comes to me and fills me with a sense of my own self-worth, my own inner strength is enhanced. And I become like a mirror also, reflecting that strength and love out into the atmosphere. And I find myself being internally quiet and nurtured.